Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known in this realm as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you, join me for some palaver here, all about Night Shift for its 40th anniversary on Hail to Stephen King, the show that I do twice a week here on The Horror Show. And yes, 40 years ago here in February, Stephen King released his first collection of short stories, but pretty much all, with the exception of just a couple of these, had already seen publication in different magazines and newspapers and things like that. So it's a hell of a collection, I gotta say, which is why I am doing a series of smaller videos in comparison with my original idea. Originally, I was thinking, well, I'm gonna start reading it about halfway through February, and then right after the month is done, I believe it's March, it's either March 3rd or March 4th, whatever the first Saturday in March is, that's when I was gonna do like a huge retrospective video. But honestly, this is maybe my favorite Stephen King short collection. It's either this or Just After Sunset. Also Bizarre Bad Dreams is really good too. But whereas there's great stuff in Skeleton Crew, there's great stuff in Everything's Eventual and Nightmares and Dreamscapes. He's put out a lot of different collections of shorts, but honestly, this one might be his best for the sheer fact that King wrote very differently back then, back here. I mean, late 60s, early 70s publication for pretty much all of these, and he was young and hungry, and boy, are these some dark stories, man. Seriously, as I've mentioned on this program before, one of the things that I love so much about Stephen King's shorts in comparison with his novels is the fact that his novels often have that little silver lining of sorts. You know, with the exception of maybe Pet Sematary, which that being the definitive choice for a book that ended in a effed up fashion. He's had his melancholy endings and stuff, but he's usually good at giving it some positive spin at the end. Very, very different with these shorts. These shorts they're very Twilight Zone, Outer Limits inspired with, a crazy twist ending at times and stuff like that. So, man, these are so good. But anyway, to get to the point, as opposed to just blathering on about this collection of stories, I decided instead that I'm going to do 5 different installments, and each of these 5 installments are going to talk briefly about 4 stories. There's 20 stories in total with this. And so the reason I'm breaking it up like this as well is because I want to implore all of you to reread this along with me. So today I'm going to be talking about the first 4 stories in here. The first one being Jerusalem's Lot. Holy shizzle, Jerusalem's Lot. Next one is Graveyard Shift, which was adapted into a very mediocre film. Third one is Night Surf, which has an interesting connection to The Stand. And then lastly, I Am the Doorway is the final entry here. So first off, Jerusalem's Lot. It's funny because it had been a while since I had read this particular story, and I recalled a lot of aspects of it, but there was one thing in particular that I did not recall so well. I mean, I remembered the rats in the walls aspect, and essentially it takes place in the mid-1800s, and this guy has just moved to this home that was in his family at various points in times, and he is in Jerusalem's Lot, basically Salem's Lot, where Salem's Lot is taking place. And this story does a very interesting job of just giving backstory to the fact that King has this thing that he likes to do where, especially with Derry, for instance, that he did later on, is that evil is drawn to specific places, and it might not be the same type of evil. That's why in It, for instance, there was obviously, the Pennywise crazy interdimensional creature aspect, but there was also people just being compelled to do terrible things, and so it's like, there's almost these energy epicenters of evil. Yeah, I did some awesome alliteration there. And yeah, it's drawn there. And basically this guy is, he starts to discover, and I didn't want to spoil these for those who haven't read them, because I'm trying to compel all of you to read them. But so he moves in with his assistant into this house, and immediately all the people in the village are just like, that is an evil house. It's the same house that Barlow moves into and stuff in Salem's Lot, but albeit many years later, like over a century later. But so the village people are immediately just like, nope. If you're living in that house, you're bad people. If you have a connection to that particular family that has lived there, you're bad people. And as he goes and explores with his kind of like butler assistant of sorts, this surrounding old deserted village next to the town, and he gets all of this crazy religious history, and it is such a good book, and it's much more graphically gruesome and like really crazy satanic. I mean, we're talking about like the mysteries of the worm and all this stuff. It's very Lovecraft and very, very good. I had forgotten how much I love Jerusalem's Lot, and another cool thing is that my Secretary of Dreams down there, basically Cemetery Dance did 2 different installments of that, and I'm really, really hoping at some point they'll get Glenn to do a 3rd one because the illustrations are just incredible. But it was actually done in this like large form visual style for Secretary of Dreams. I can't remember if it's the first one or the second one, but yeah, so it was fun to reread the story in that format, see some of these illustrations, and there's dark secrets here, y'all. Serious, serious stuff, and I don't want to spoil it. I want you all to go and read Jerusalem's Lot here in Night Shift. So, second story is the one that's actually been adapted into a film. Kind of a lame film, which is funny because they didn't really change that much of it, because it's a pretty simple concept. Graveyard Shift is basically about this college boy who is working at this old mill, and they're like cleaning it out and stuff, and the foreman is like a real big time dick to him and constantly calling him college boy because he, started out in college and then dropped out and bounced around between a few different jobs. So they decide over the July 4th holiday that they're gonna go in and they're gonna clean out the basement of this place, and there's worry that there's a rat problem there, but the rat problem turns out to be a lot bigger than they realized. And so there's interesting interplay between Hall, who's the main character, the college boy, and Warwick and stuff, who's like the asshole foreman and stuff. And this is a story that the one thing that I will tell you is that they find out that there's a basement below the basement, and that's the only spoiler that I'm gonna divulge here. And they find some crazy stuff. You're crazy, man. I like you, but you're crazy, man. Yeah. They find some crazy stuff down there. Mutated rats who have like never seen the light of day, and they're pretty big. And so I can't say that I recommend the movie necessarily. It's one of those thoroughly mediocre Stephen King adaptations that could have been so much better, and that I think maybe does need to be remade. So Graveyard Shift, pretty dope, but I must say I do prefer Jerusalem's Lot better. Now, the third story here is, I think it's the shortest one, and it's called Night Surf, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Night Surf. Are you noticing there's night in some of the decent amount of these titles? I think those are the only 2, if I recall correctly. But in any event, Night Surf is intriguing for the sheer fact that it's the first ever mention of Captain Trips. Yeah, so basically, this is almost like a little prequel to The Stand that he went on to write and release, a couple of years later, because I'm not sure of the initial publication of Night Surf. But yeah, essentially, you've got this band of college kids who they are just chilling out on the beach, and they just got done dealing with an infected person in a pretty gruesome fashion, and so they think that there is a different origin for this virus, this flu that has killed off pretty much the entire population except for a few people who are like still wandering around and seemingly immune because they think they got a different form of it and then just developed an immunity to it or whatever. But yeah, they're chilling on the beach, and this kid is with this chubby girl that is really annoying and stuff, and there's a couple other people in their little group. But yeah, it's my least favorite of these stories, but it's not bad. It's interesting, and if you can just overlook the fact that the mythology was changed a little bit by the time you got to The Stand when he began writing that and stuff, it's actually a pretty interesting little just like side note nugget for fans of The Stand. And I'm going to talk about this story a little bit more in spoiler detail when I do my 40th anniversary coverage of The Stand for its anniversary this year, because yeah, later on in 1978, King released one of his best books ever, in my top 3 in various people's best of El Rey lists, and with good reason. It's damn good. Now, the last one here it's a departure for King into sci-fi territory, kind of, but it's definitely more so like with his nice little horror spin to it and stuff. It's called I Am the Doorway. And interesting thing, in the original paperback that you have here, I don't know how well you can see, but there is significance to this cover and the story. So you've got this retired astronaut, he's chilling in Florida, he still likes watching the rockets take off and everything, which is pretty, well, it makes sense, right? You know, the love never really goes away, or the interest, in fact, you know, especially for a lot of post-military or government people or whatever. I don't think that sort of occupation ever completely leaves you, you know, same if you're a musician, same if you're any type of creative or, you know, whatever. If you're in an industry that you're passionate about, or that, you know, just invokes passionate response, even because a lot of people are military and they hate it, but, you know, they're just fascinated by it in the same right. So, retired astronaut who did a circle around Venus, and it was a bad kind of landing, and he's pretty sure that something came back with him and infected him, and is basically using his body as like a means of spying on, you know, just Earth, basically. And the story keeps it very vague as to whether this actually did happen or if he's just going crazy. And I'm not going to mention what the final verdict ends up being, but yeah, he's just sitting on the beach and he's telling this story to his friend Richard. And yeah, Artie's an interesting guy, and you can tell that he's on like the verge of nervous breakdown, or has already had it happen, and he's just like, he's riding it out, you know? So yeah, I love when science fiction and horror are melded together, you know? That's why, and I mean, Aliens is my favorite movie of all time for that sheer fact. I love anything to do with just a villainous alien aspect, albeit this a much more sophisticated, you know, collaboration, if in fact that is what's happening. So I can't spoil anything more about I Am the Doorway because I want you flipping people to read it. It's so good. And yeah, so that is the first 4 stories from Night Shift, guys. It is so good. This and Just After Sunset, like I said, but are my favorite King collections of shorts. But this is so interesting because you peer into a much more hungry, starving artist ferociousness compared to some of the sophisticated. These are very raw stories, and I love them for that degree. So tune in on the upcoming Tuesday. Today is the 17th, I want to say. So yeah, on the 20th of February here is going to be my next installment, and the next installment is going to be covering the Mangler, yep, which was adapted into a film and a couple other films, none of which were very good. We've got The Boogeyman, which is also very interesting. We have Gray Matter, which is one of my favorite King shorts ever. It was also done in that Secretary of Dreams. And then we're also going to be talking about Battleground, which was done, I want to say, in The Cat's Eye, in that anthology film that had Drew Barrymore. Well, I'll save my thoughts on these stories for the next installment. But I got to extend a grande gracias to all of you peeps for tuning in to this slightly shorter Stephen King episode for Hail to Stephen King. I have been Jaime and Fuego. You can find me on all social media sectors: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Fuegotainment relaunch happening right around the Oscars, which is going to be pretty exciting. And yeah, also if you haven't liked, commented, subscribed here to The Horror Show, obviously, if you were just discovering us through this video, please do. It means the world to us. Also, tonight, if you happen to tune in, like today, you know, here on the 17th of February, and you're looking for something to do later tonight, regardless of what part of the world you're in, at 12 a.m., midnight Pacific Standard Time, we are going to be going live on The Horror Show for this big global creepy crawl thing, which is us and 23 other YouTube channels all banding together with hopes of, just in the wake of the YouTube apocalypse, which is going after people who cover more controversial material and stuff like that here on YouTube. Thankfully, The Horror Show is in a good state of sorts, you know. We're not super big, but we have enough of an audience and enough view time and all that stuff. But a lot of smaller creators, like, you know, our friends at Channel Sundown, for instance, who are going to be joining us tonight, you're not going to be able to monetize if you don't have at least, it's like 6,000 hours of watch time and like 1,000 subscribers. Like, YouTube is basically giving all these stipulations, which those don't even just affect, you know, people who make content that they deem unmonetizable. That's going to be going for any type of channel, which yeah, is just new, and it doesn't really. It really puts a lot of pressure on creators and people who want to express themselves here on YouTube. So tune in live at midnight Pacific Standard Time for an hour with us on the horror show. And if you were watching this video afterwards, sorry for wasting your time. But yes, once again, a grande gracias to all of you. Read Night Shift. Join me for those next 4 stories here on the following Tuesday, the 20th. And until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more for that next installment of my Night Shift 40th anniversary coverage, stay scared and read Stephen King. Even though I recommend Night Shift, all his stuff is good.